slides for our
I
panel,
will.
right?
I will happily do that.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you. Well, this is our, I think, third time doing this panel together, and it really speaks well to the collaboration that we have had across Hyku projects, as Kevin indicated and as has been said a couple of times. So we're going to start off the panel talking about who is presenting today, and thanks, to the right place, who is presenting today and why and what projects we are representing. And then we will go a little bit into collaboration, which Ilkay will lead, and then more on individual projects, which you've heard a little bit about today, but we hope to be able to answer specific questions. So I'm going to, again, I'm Ellen Ramsey from the University of Virginia. I'm the principal investigator for the Advancing Hyku project, which is a 2-year project funded by the Arcadia Charitable Trust, which is a service of Lisbeth Rousing. And I always get this wrong. Wait, I need to do it again. Do it again. Sorry, it is a charitable fund of Lisbeth Rousing and Peter Baldwin. And we will also have from the British Library, Jenny Basford, who's going to talk about that project implementation. And from the Pawnee Palsy Hyku for Consortia / Hyku Commons, to go with what the Slack channel has been saying, project is Amanda Herford today. So to kick off very quickly, I'm going to turn it back over to Ilkay, and she's going to talk about collaboration across these 4 projects, because I think this is really the biggest takeaway, what we've seen. And go forward, Ilkay.
Thank you, Ellen. Yeah, only a few minutes. We thought we can start this session with talking about our community collaboration practices in advancing Hyku. That's why I will just take you through some of the examples and some of the lessons learned. First of all, we just wanted to just highlight, why we are really underlining this, and what is the value actually in it, for us, for the advancing Hyku. Ultimate goal, apart from all the specific deliverables and objectives of the project, which Alan is going to a little bit talk about, the ultimate goal, is for us, whatever we achieved and produced, within the advancing Hyku, is to give that back to the community. The other thing, we always try to do our best, to avoid, silos across the project. Also, try to avoid any redundancy work, or not, or avoid, duplicates, and also have a, unified, vision in terms of to be able to actually build upon each other's, project, the achievements and the successes. Some of these are, these things are a bit, obviously out there. It's like more people actually adopt these, technologies. They can actually build upon those technology, and then this is actually better for the community. And people can take it and use it, or whatever actually we didn't actually achieve, that also needs to be communicated and say something about the sustainability. Maybe more actually about that. I should also just underline that it just independent of the persons or institutions or in service providers, it just brings the sustainability into the projects. And also obviously we just learn from each other. We share our community experiences. This is also means that the efficiency in terms of using resources across the projects. So as I said, I will just try and highlight a few things, and then I will hand it over to Ellen. I'm not going to actually go into the details about this survey, but one of the first things that we did, we had an enormous list of features that we wanted to develop right at the beginning, early in the project. And at that point, we really wanted to ask the community what is most important for them, what to actually prioritize in terms of developing features, because obviously, we just, according to those, survey results, we did move some of the things, earlier in the project, and we just delayed some of the items. But this was quite an important milestone, at least in our projects, in terms of community collaboration. The second point, I don't know whether any of you actually used, but we did communicate this, within our Hyku community. Alongside with the survey, we did work on a number of user stories. Yesterday's storytelling session also reminded me this, to be able to spec anything, you obviously you do spend quite a lot of time on these user stories. We did put them out in the Advancing Hyku GitHub, all these user stories, so we are hoping that someone else can just pick those up and can use it for their own projects. The last one, I think Kevin very nicely also put this out there. This was something that we try to initiate to show everyone that what Advancing Hyku is really working on, and what is the progress on those items in terms of the feature developments. And all these cards, all these features are also linked to the user stories. If there is anything done, you see actually in this either local instances or in the Hyku code base. We also actually add the links to the codes for someone else to use. This is now being used actually across 5 projects, so we are so happy to this has been actually picked up and used quite heavily. So going back to Ellen after this slide.
Thanks, Ilkay. As you can tell from this presentation, there's lots and lots of handoffs among institutions in these projects, and I think that this is great evidence of that. So we wanted to highlight and remind folks about what the Advancing Hyku project has been. And so here's where we started. Hopefully this is old news to most people in this presentation, but if this is your first Samvera Connect and you are interested in why and what we are doing, this is a list of the original deliverables that we proposed and had funded for this project way back in October 2019, a different lifetime ago. We did get an extension on the project for 6 months because COVID. We are in the home stretch looking at the final 4 or so months of the project. So, okay, this is what we said we were going to do. And the question is, how far have we gotten? You can take a look very visually at this lovely update of piece of the poster that we put in for, I think, Open Repositories. Ilkay did this one, and we updated it just this week for where we are on deliverables. WP stands for work package, for those who aren't familiar with that parlance. And as you can see, lots and lots of things are really nearing completion or are complete. And you saw yesterday the demo from Ubiquity Press on ORCID IDs and author profile syncing, which we're all very excited about. Work we are currently working on at this moment is in browser display. So, and we were again excited about the work that Avalon is doing on IIIF. So good community collaboration there. There's a possibility, but that's new to us. A couple of things that we need to wrap up or potentially, hand off. And again, the community user stories are super, super helpful for that. One of the things that we've seen is that the preservation pathways work that we initiated with AP Trust early in our project. There was some good demonstration of some bagging protocols that would work well. And actually, it turns out that there's a need for that work in a slightly different format in the Hyku for Consortia project. So we're partnering with AP Trust, and they are partnering with Hyku for Consortia. So that's a very nice handoff of community work that we're looking at. And then the final piece of the project will be UVA sample migration to a hosted Hyku instance. So what have we done? Well, this is not news. You've seen this a couple of times in presentations across the community so far, but one thing I do want to highlight, a couple things I want to highlight are the architecture review. that was done by British Library early in our project. We are including that in our deliverables because it may impact the way that future projects approach Hyku architecture. And so if you haven't taken a look at it and you have interest in the infrastructure of the underlying code and platform, I do encourage you to do that. It's in an open repository there that happens to live at UVA. Just to highlight what Ilkay was talking about in terms of our community check-ins, we've done that and really, really appreciate the collaboration. And I think one thing that we're all really proud of is how well the community came together around Hyku 3 and what we were able to put into that from each project. And there's a long post on that. That was a collaboration of Chris Kolvard and Kevin Kuchansky and Ilkay and myself and probably the people that I'm forgetting that's up on the, and Heather Greer-Klein helped us put it up on the samvera.org blog. Finally, as you've heard a couple of times and Kevin mentioned in his Hyku overview, the options for hosted Hyku repository are expanding, and that's just a very, very different place than we were a couple of years ago when we started this project. Not due to us, but we've been part of that and we're very proud of it. All right, next slide. I'm going to turn it back to Ilkay for a moment so that we can talk about what we've learned from our project thus far. Actually, I think that one's mine.
Yeah, please go ahead for the first one. Yeah.
So as you've heard from all of us who are participating in this project, and I'm very proud of us for participating in Samvera Connect, working closely across projects, being open, being transparent has been really, really important. One of the things I think that's been a culture change within the Samvera community, or something that we've really learned to do better, is to be open about plans in advance. I know that sometimes that can feel very difficult when you're approaching funders to talk about what your plans are when you don't know the results of a proposal. But I think that we've done, that the community in general has done a much better job of that in recent years, and we are excited to continue along that trend. Otherwise, I think what we found at the beginning of this collaboration across Hyku projects is we all had gotten funded for things that we couldn't quite tease out how they were different, and they are different, but it took us a little while to figure that out. And once we did, we've been much better about transparency and collaboration. I'm gonna turn the next couple over to Ilkay.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, for this, next second and the third point, I wanted to just underline, especially with layers of communications, we found very useful to have conversations between the project leads and the repo managers to develop, across projects within the IQ to develop ideas, improve user stories and define the specs. And in the same way, our developers actually needed to take focused conversations. And like Kevin, before he also mentioned this calls, monthly calls. This year, Ubiquity Press actually initiated this regular IQ tech calls, and that clearly had a positive impact on advancing Hyku and beyond, I think, across projects. My third point about, community code contribution, this is very much, linked to community ownership to me over infrastructure. So if something actually developed, in the community for the community as a code contribution, you want to make sure that actually that goes back to the somewhere core, somewhere code base, and stays, within the community. But at least, from my own experience, this was a great conversation to have actually within the project and also with the other project partners in Hyku community. That's why I just wanted to add this here, to have this conversation at the beginning and also keep going actually ongoing conversations. And for the last point, I'll just get back to you.
Thanks, Ilkay. The last point I think is one that we can all take home, and we're talking about being agile with a little a. But also realistic about project deliverables, and things that keep us grounded in reality are clearly defined deliverables, clearly defined work packages, but also coming back to those when there are questions. And just yesterday, Ilkay and I were talking about the user stories that we had worked so hard on. I was like, oh yeah, we need to go back and check on those for a couple of questions it should resolve. And so, you know, not just doing the work, but remembering what you did and using it throughout a project is always a good practice. So with that, I'm going to turn it over back to let's see who's our next on our panel. Should be Jenny.
Hello. Right. Bear with me 2 seconds while I remember how to share my screen, how I remember to do anything. I missed the very first part of the earlier panel because we were in a sprint meeting just before this, and I've just come back from a lovely week off, and I'm like, oh, what's my job?
We're so glad to see you, Jenny. I'll cover for you while you get ready. Yes, Jenny, can I share why you were off?
Of course you can. Yeah.
So when we scheduled this panel, Jenny said, sure, I'll be just back from my honeymoon, literally on the 19th of October. So huge thanks to Jenny for being with us today. Longtime collaborator, but not usually, you know, coming in from quite this much time off.
I know it's dangerous. You might get used to this, you know. It's a bit worrying. Thank you, though. It's so nice to I'm just very sorry that Ellen actually came on a trip to London and I missed her because I was away. So that was a real shame, but hopefully we will get to have a non-virtual meetup one day.
It's going to happen someday.
It will. I was very jealous. You got to go to see the Paddington exhibition and everything. I was like, oh, I would have loved to have done that with all of you.
There's a story behind that I'll put in the Slack channel.
Oh, wonderful. So thank you so much for handing over the baton, Ilkay and Ellen. My name is Jenny Basford. I'm the Repository Services Specialist at the British Library. I'm one of 3 of us in our Repository Services team. Sarah, our lovely colleague, Repository Services Lead, would also have been here today, but she has also passed on the holiday baton, or I've passed it on to her. She's gone on holiday this week. So you drew the short straw with somebody who's just come back off holiday. Basically, I think that Ellen and Ilkay have set a wonderful kind of context and setting for this to talk about all of the really great community work that's being done. And I will touch on a little bit of that at the end, as well, of how the British Library's work, the kind of the shared repository service that we have, has kind of fed into those very briefly, but mostly what I kind of wanted to focus on was just giving an update basically on what we've been up to since Open Repositories, and possibly earlier if people didn't catch up at Open Repositories. So we are also fans of Hyku, so we're also using Hyku as well. We've put this slide in here just to kind of show the kind of architecture that we have set up here. So our first project that we had up and running was our Cultural Heritage Shared Repository. These are all organisations that are a bit like the British Library. They're from the GLAM sector. So nice to be part of the GLAM sector. The galleries, libraries, archives and museums. And you can see all their names there, but we have a nice kind of variety of organisations from across the UK there. Admittedly, there's quite a lot of London focus, but you know, we are hoping for more partners to be joining us as we kind of go throughout the next couple of years. Obviously, COVID has had a huge impact on organisations in this sector. So joining a shared repository service, although it's something that many people have expressed a really big interest in doing, financially, you know, other things have to come first at the moment. And then since we last spoke, I think at Open Repositories, we have managed to start work on our NHS shared repository as well. So that's the National Health Service that's that we love in the UK, and it is split into NHS England, Scotland, Wales, etc. So we've actually been working with 6 pilot partners from NHS England organisations, which has been really kindly funded by Health Education England. So whereas our cultural heritage repository has a shared search that kind of shares across 6 tenants, so each organisation has their own tenant. In the NHS repository, it's 1 tenant and all these 6 organisations, and actually there's more than 6 because some of them are working as consortia in their own right, all log into 1 individual repository, so 1 tenant. So it's what I thought would be nice is to kind of compare and contrast the 2 kind of models, if that kind of makes sense, and see if it's of any interest to you all. So just to kind of recap on what we were doing in the cultural heritage repository, we've got everybody on a single instance, and then we have this shared search layer, which I saw a little bit of. It all appeared last week, and it's on our staging site at the moment, so it will be there very, very soon on the public view. In one of the things, or some of the things that we offer as part of that shared repository service, is that every organisation that joins gets their own tenant, their own repository, which means they're very much in control of the kind of content that they put in and the ways in which they manage that. So they might choose to just have 1 or 2 individuals who upload everything for an organisation, or if they wanted, they could have everybody, all of their researchers directly uploading their content themselves. So they're able to kind of make those decisions themselves. All of these organisations, branding is a really important part of each of these institutions, and that goes for the virtual space as well. Even more so with COVID, with all of these organisations having to close their doors to the public over the last year and a half. So we really wanted to be able to give them a place that they could kind of promote and, continue their organisation's online branding and logo, unique kind of URL and things like that, in order to kind of make it part of the same website for them in their own right. But also kind of maintaining part of this shared kind of collaboration between all these other organisations as well, in the research sector, in the research kind of context. One of the things that they get from doing this, or some of the things I hope that they get from doing this, is they're benefiting from having our expertise, because we are the ones who've kind of taken the plunge, investigated which systems to use and things like that. And we also have a bit more experience in terms of running repositories ourselves. So all the partners come to us when they have queries, whether those are technical queries or kind of content, copyright related queries. Admittedly, sometimes the very technical queries then get immediately referred to our technical suppliers, but we do our best. So our shared NHS Open Access repository is, I should have said, the iro.bl.uk. IRO stands for Independent Research Organisation, which is a term used by one of the main funding bodies here in the UK to refer to all of these kinds of organisations as a whole. So that's why we chose that URL, just as a kind of landing point. But the NHS one is a tenant that sits on there as well. So at the moment it sits at nhs.iro.bl.uk. And our colleagues in the NHS have only just started adding things to it. So there's not loads in there at the moment, but you can go along there and have a look and search to your heart's content. This project is going to run until May next year, and these are our kind of pilot partners. As you can see, so it's very geographic. So the NHS is the NHS, basically, whichever country it's in. But then within that is broken down into all sorts of different kind of essentially geographic areas. But sometimes you also get them broken down into geographic areas and also areas of expertise or discipline. So the third one down, you can see there is the Birmingham and Solihull Mental Health NHS Foundation Trust. So that's their focus. But then above that, you have the Black Country Health Libraries Consortium. So that's going to be lots of different libraries all feeding into one who are based in that area of the UK. And then Barts Health NHS Trust, that's a health trust, that's a hospital in London that kind of runs services from within there. So you can see there's all these different ways of how the NHS can be formed. They're mostly geographic in their kind of the way they're split. But the important bit is the NHS. That's the identity, that's the branding, that's the thing that the public recognise and look for. So on the public side, we've separated each of those partners want to kind of designate and show that their content is theirs. So they each have a collection. So we use that kind of communities and collections kind of to use the repository parlance for it. So as a partner uploads content, they just make sure they add it to the right collection. So that you could search across everything, or you can search within one collection. It's quite easy to kind of see where something belongs. One of the things that we experimented with when we set up our demo repository for our NHS colleagues was using the admin set concept. So when you go into Hyku, and I think probably Hyrax as well, you're able to control the workflows. So whether something needs to be approved or not, by controlling which admin set content goes into. So we tried having an admin set for each of those partner organizations, but it was, I have to be honest, a little bit of a nightmare. So that's one of the findings that we've come up with so far, is that so for us it has been easier, and for our partners it's been easier to have everything just sit in that default admin set. I realize this is probably a bit technical and nerdy if you're not already a user of Hyku, and if you want to talk about it later, we can kind of share some screens and show it to you. And then the only way that it's kind of divided and kind of demarcated is the public collection, if that makes sense. The reason why I think admin sets are a bit of a nightmare is because everybody who has access to this repository for the NHS one, they are all admins. So it doesn't matter if they're depositing into a specific admin set, they can actually see what's in all the other admin sets as well, because they have a very high level of access. So I think that would be one of the things that I would suggest that we might want to change if we continue with this project, and it continues with it being all in one repository. But this has also meant that the kind of service features that we're working out and going through are therefore things like you can all access each other's content. How are you going to make sure that you govern this and accidentally don't delete anything, etc., etc. But one thing they do seem very happy with and so keen with so far is that NHS identity is really kind of emphasized. But this is a pilot project, which is a lovely thing because it means you can kind of experiment and see how it goes and maybe switch things as we go along and see. And you know, the reason they came to the BL in the first place to test this out is because they were seen and were really interested in how we've been doing things with the cultural heritage partners. Really quickly, because I'm aware that Amanda has her turn next as well. Some of the things we've been doing over the last few months since I spoke at Open Repositories is we're still going through our migration from our previous supplier, which was Ubiquity, who we still get to work with via Advancing Hyku, which is great, to Notch8, who are our new supplier. We've added a few new kind of resource type descriptors. We already had, I would say, at least 50, but we've added a few new ones for the NHS. We've switched from using what Ubiquity had, a kind of bespoke customized import and export tool. We're now using bulk wraps, and we're really experimenting and, you know, really pushing that, I think, to its limits. I hope Notch8 don't mind me saying that. We've got the universal viewer working, it all looks great. Our data site integration is coming along as well, and we've been able to use the kind of funder lookup again, which is another thing that was very important to our research governance and research development teams. And then finally, the kind of community aspects that we've been kind of involved with. We've really enjoyed being part of things like Advancing Hyku and the other kind of new-ish communities that we have around. So we were so delighted when we found the pals, who you're going to hear from next, and we set up our regular water coolers with them. It was just so nice to find other people using Hyku and being part of the Hyku interest group as well. We've been able to continue that. Our kind of community theme has been really important to us because we're obviously operating within kind of established communities and collaborations already with the IROs and our NHS England libraries. And also we feel quite lucky that we've been able to work with both Ubiquity, and we still get to do that. And we've been working with Notch8 because when there've been developments that we had and kind of features we had in our old repository that we don't yet have in our new one, we've been able to say, oh, well, Ubiquity know how to do that. They did that already. So the two have been able to set up the tech calls that Ilkay and Ellen mentioned, and really kind of helps encourage and foster that collaborative spirit, I think. Finally, the last thing that we have coming up is our migration should be done very, very soon. But then for the future, we're looking to see how our NHS pilot kind of carries on, adding more people to the IRO and Cultural Heritage Service. And as I put there, continue to fill up our repositories where we're very excited to just add things and make content available. So we're really happy with it. And so, yeah, thank you. Over to you again, Ellen.
Thanks, Jenny. That was great. And if you have a second, do pop into the Slack channel. There was a really robust conversation going on about some issues that you raised that were well answered by folks in the community, and that conversation is still ongoing. All right, Amanda, all yours.
Thanks. Can you see my slides, or are you seeing my notes?
We see your slides.
Okay, great. So hi, and thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, LK. I'm Amanda Herford. I'm Scholarly Communications Director for PALNI, and I'm one of the project leads for the Hyku for Consortia project. Hyku for Consortia is a joint project between PALNI and PALC. And we are two consortia of very different sizes and geographic locations and different service models and all of that, but we share a vision for collaborative repository service with Hyku. So today I'll be representing our team and giving you an update of where we've been, the work we've done, and where we're going, and how we value community and how we work in this community. All right, so I did mention that I'm kind of representing a larger team here today. I did want to mention who the other folks on our team are. We have Jill Morris, who is the Executive Director for PALC, Kirsten Leonard, who is the Executive Director for PALNI. They're our overall project directors. And then we also have our other project lead, which is Gretchen Gigan, who's the project manager for the project. And Nick Stanton-Rourke, who is a newer key member to the team. He's the one that's been working closely with our piloters and giving a lot of technical help and documentation and testing and all of that. So we're really excited to have him aboard. So to start off with a little bit of a status update, we do have a live production instance at hykucommons.org. It's a multi-tenant instance in use by 4 consortia. So we have us who are using it, the PALs, PALNI and PALC, plus new piloters at the Lewis and the Viva consortia. And we're working with Notch 8 for development and hosting services. So back in August, we did some data collection and we collected some statistics about our repository and where we are. And I thought I'd go ahead and share those with you now. So we have 5 active tenants in what we're calling production, and 10 of those are live. The other 5 are sort of under construction and being worked on behind the scenes. We have 13 other repositories that are also hidden that are just sort of testing or demo repositories or pilots, if you will, that are not live. And these stats might be a little bit out of date because they're from August, but at the time that we collected the statistics, we had 252 collections and nearly 5,000 works in our shared repository. So the work that we completed under our previous IMLS grant really focused on what we had named our grant, which was scaling up a collaborative consortial IR. And we were also trying to figure out how we might better support the consortial use case and multi-tenant administration of Hyku. So with feedback from both of our consortia, actual users, we defined some specifications for development of some predetermined key areas, such as theme templates. We created theme templates in order to offer our libraries more choice and some more customization options. And we also worked on groups and permissions to better serve what we call collaborative workflows. And we created 2 new work types to support common scenarios for library publishing, which are OER and ETD. So we also started piloting the service during that time period with actual users and started figuring out how our consortia can work together on a shared repository service. So that was our previous grant. And that brings us up to our current grant and plans for the future. So the latest grant that we were awarded from IMLS now focuses on removing barriers to adoption. So in this grant, we continue to spend some time on defining what we're calling our operational model. And we plan to translate what we learn in building this operational model of how does this actually work into a toolkit for repository collaboration. And this time in our grant for development, we decided to, instead of coming up with a predefined set of work that we want to do, we'll shape our work plans directly from feedback that we receive from our users about barriers. So for the first phase of the project, which we've actually already started, it's a period of kind of trying to figure out where the problem points are. And we think that at least some of our work will address some things that have already been mentioned from our users, and those are metadata flexibility, accessibility, and file handling. So overall, our goal for this grant is to increase flexibility, accessibility, and usability of Hyku, but we really do plan to let the user research guide our way in order to make Hyku attractive to a wide variety of potential adopters. So I'm not expecting you to take this in really, but I did want to show our Gantt chart here to show our overall schedule for the grant, which runs until July of 2023, and how it's divided into 3 work streams: our user research and analysis, our tech development in 6 sprints, and our operational model and toolkit development. And if you want a closer look at this chart, it's in our full grant proposal, which is on the IMLS site, and we'll make these slides available to you. So we've started our research phase by gathering some baseline data from our current users. We recently put out our satisfaction survey, asking a whole bunch of questions about how our users are satisfied with different functions and features of Hyku. And we have a lot of data to sort through. We really haven't started the analysis on that yet. But at first glance, we're seeing that our users are largely satisfied with the process of describing and editing single works, but several have mentioned that they're unsatisfied with our current metadata templates offered through our stock work types. So our plans are to dig in there and to find out better, what the needs are there and how we can address it moving forward. And we're also gathering stats on repository growth, hopefully that we can, repository statistics now, so hopefully we can show growth over the life of the grant, things like size and numbers of repository, web traffic, and diversity of our populations. And we'll continue to collect data on a regular schedule going forward through the grant. And we're also planning to have a UX consultant help with surveys, interviews, focus groups, and usability tests. So sneak preview, we are now seeking a UX consultant for the short-term position, which goes through June of 2022. So if you're interested in this, if you have knowledge and user experience and you'd like to work with us, please do consider applying. There's the email address on the screen if you're interested to apply or ask questions, and you can visit our website to learn more. I'm just going to kind of speed through this because I realize we're out of time. So I wanted to mention our code contributions to Hyku. Wherever possible, we really do try to contribute back the code from all of our work. And thanks to Crystal Richardson from Notch 8 for this list. This lists out really all of the contributions that we've made to Hyku code, Hyku core. So our previous grant resulted in improvements to bulk racks, themes, and customization, and lots of other things. And we have some upcoming contributions listed there on the right that we're currently working on. So that's been a really interesting process to consider what others might want and if they want the option to do what we did. And a really good way to discuss all that has been through the Hyku interest group, which we consider as sharing part of the community. So for us, it's not just about contributing code or borrowing from others. It's about making connections and working with our colleagues in the interest group and in the water cooler in order to stay up to date and avoid duplicating efforts. So Ellen, I don't know if we want to switch back, but I've got a call for community input here. Please do consider reaching out to us if you're interested in telling us about your barriers with Hyku, and we'd love to get your feedback on our operational model and our toolkit. and we invite you to join the conversation.
Thanks, Amanda. We are at time for the panel, I believe. So let's continue the conversation in Slack. It's been great there, and we can do that. The one thing that I will put back out to the community that I know we wanted to say is, please keep talking to us if you're planning a project, if you're interested in either using any of our implementations or are thinking about what Hyku doesn't do. Keep talking to us. We really, really want to hear that. So anything else from any of the panelists that you want to put in as a last thought? With that, we'll say thank you and